So it's a pleasure to introduce this book, which is Gelora Api Revolusi, which is about to come out in a second edition. The first was in 1986, and it was based on a 36-part BBC London radio broadcast series, which was broadcast to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Indonesian independence. The 36 parts were partly academics and Indonesianists, Western for the most part, reflecting on the Indonesian Revolution and its antecedents, but also a large number were from participants in the revolution, including the Sultan. I'm going to the 9th, General Abdul Haris Nasution, Adam Malik, who was a Bermuda at that time and later became foreign minister and vice president, very important figure in the both in the Orde Lama of Sukarno and in the Orde Baru at the beginning of Suharto, and a whole range of figures in the sort of second rank, like Raden Maladi, who was the head of the Radio Republik Indonesia, and Gogen Chuan, whom we interviewed after the series was broadcast, in Amstelveen, which is a suburb of Amsterdam, where he was in exile from 1966, on the 9th of November 1989. So this is the outcome of that interview, which was very kindly made available to us by Colin Wilde, my colleague who edited the Gelora Api Revolusi, produced the series, head of the Indonesian section at the BBC between 1972 and 1990, sadly now passed on the 2013. But his widow Colette allowed us to actually publish this interview in the second expanded edition of Gelora Api Revolusi, which will be published in September this year by PBK, Penerbit Buku Kompas, and also to make it available on the World Wide Web, so that historians and those who are doing research, particularly on the Battle of Surabaya between the 27th of October 1945 and the 20th of November 1945, when the British deployed a whole Indian division, the 5th Indian Division, to revenge the death of a British general, AWS Malaby, who was killed on the 30th of October 1945, trying to negotiate a ceasefire in the streets of Surabaya. Wim Gogen Chuan was an eyewitness. He's a very valuable and a very credible eyewitness, and he has some actually very interesting and very critical things to say about Bung Tomo, Raden Sutomo, who founded the Radio Pemberontakan, the insurrectionary radio in Surabaya, but in fact was not in Surabaya during the Battle of Surabaya. Wim Gogen Chuan and his colleagues in the Palang Biru, which he founded, the Blue Cross, which was the Chinese-Indonesian version of the Red Cross, and the Angkatan Indonesia Tionghoa Muda, which he also founded in Malang in early September 1945. He was there, and he has some critical things to say about Bung Tomo and the way he used his insurrectionary rhetoric to persuade many young Pemuda, many of the youth, Indonesian youth, to lay down their lives during the Battle of Surabaya, when 20,000 people were killed, mainly combatants, but also a lot of civilians. And of the 450,000 population of Surabaya, a third were made homeless and became refugees. So this is a major battle, street by street. The British brought in tanks, they brought in fighter aircraft, and they basically took Surabaya apart street by street over a 2-week, 10-day battle, which was very bloody. British themselves lost over 700 troops, and the Indonesians lost much more heavily, 20 to 30 times that number. So it was a tragedy. It goes down in the annals of British history as the last battle of the empire, the Raj, the last battle using British Indian troops. very difficult politically because obviously there was the Indian nationalist movement, Subhas Chandra Bose and the Congress, which were fighting for very much the same ideals as the Indonesians. So to use these troops against the Indonesian forces on the ground was politically extremely sensitive and persuaded the British that this would be the last hurrah, the last shout, as it were, of the Raj. So enjoy this and learn from this interview, which is very wide-ranging. It talks about Wim Gogen Chuan's work with Antara, the news agency, Indonesian news agency, which was founded just before the outbreak of the Second World War, which Adam Malik was very much involved with, and his own experiences, because he was obviously a co-founder of Papergi in March 1954, and was himself a refugee from Indonesia post 1965-66, when he was forced to leave the country because of the political situation, and set up home in Amsterdam, where he taught in the Faculty of Philosophy, and was a very productive and very wise and interesting and important historical figure. So enjoy, and thank you for listening to this.
Long call listeners 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
It got a Japanese head. Amazement, I forgot. Terry, do you remember the name of our friend in Japan? He was the Japanese head of, so to say, the Indonesian section of Dome. That was the old Antara section.
When you say the Indonesian section
of Dome,
do you mean the branch of Dome operating within Indonesia?
No, of Dome. Dome operating in Indonesia had a staff, an Indonesian staff. Well, the function was, of course, to serve the Indonesian language newspapers who were there. For example, Asia Raya, etc.
Yeah.
And of course, the radio.
Yes. So Dome operated in two languages, in Japanese
and in Indonesian. Yeah, that was very important because that was the first time Indonesian people could hear nationwide, so to say, could hear the voice of Sukarno.
Yeah. Yes.
You could. That was one of the factors accelerating the nationalist movement.
Yeah.
Historically, the Japanese occupation, functioned as a catalyst, like that. So it was not all recons. You see, of course, the Dutch considered him, Sukarno, as a collaborator. After all, it was the same position like the Indians, Subhas Chandra Bose. You remember, and there was in Iran, wasn't there also something like that? Collaborating with the Nazis. I don't know.
No, I don't.
It's not my wheels.
No,
it's not. Well, it was like that.
But anyway, the also presumably this was the first time that Indonesians had operated a news agency handling international news. Or
no, Japanese news. Of course, what Dome got from Tokyo, of course, but the history of Antara began already before the war.
Yes, that's right. It was Adam Malik, actually, was one of the founders.
One of the founders. The most important was another man who was dead now, Sipahutar. That was also from Sumatran descent, Marnak, like all of them, Batak people. The name was given by noted author Sanusi Pani. He wrote several novels and so one of the nationalists, one of the men who partook in the nationalist movement, wrote a book of history, etc. The name was given by him, by this. The name itself is very interesting.
Antara, well, it's a very appropriate name. It suggests communications, connections.
Connection, between. In fact,
it's between,
It is between. It is not a verb.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Antara, between. Very poor, was supported, and that must be mentioned about. supported by the Chinese press. They were very kind. Well, at that time I was a young man, I was a student, so what I am telling you is from what I heard from, for example, from Adamalik. That was the story. How poor they were, working in a small room. They had sometimes no money to eat, and then, well, invited by the Chinese colleagues. Well, come sit down and eat with us. That was there. Antara was meant as a tool to develop Indonesian nationalism. That's why Antara had, before the war also, a correspondent in Holland. But the correspondent was not a person. It was...
Oh, lovely.
Do you use sugar?
I do. No milk, but I do sugar. Thank you.
My controller. It was the Perhimpunan Indonesia, the Indonesian Nationalist Association, founded in 1928.
Please. Thank you very much.
Well, the founders were people like Hatta, Sastro Abdul, all these people, the first generation of modern nationalists.
Yes.
That was 1928. Perhimpunan Indonesia was the outcome of another association still using a Dutch name, Indische Vereniging.
Yeah.
And then it became Perhimpunan Indonesia. Now, it was this association which was the correspondent, the Dutch correspondent, so to say, of Antara. And Perhimpunan Indonesia each year will nominate you. This year, it's your task to send letters, newsletters, that's all.
Yeah.
And to receive that was very expensive.
Yeah.
No, I have no money. No, that was that.
Yes.
It was that. And after the war, it was me, after I graduated, after my MA, who was asked to become a correspondent here in Amsterdam.
Is that how you worked? You worked for Antara here, not for...
First year.
Yes.
First year.
What year was that?
That was 1950.
Oh, I see.
It was 1950. Just before the RTC, Round Table Conference.
Yes.
That was that time.
Yeah.
It was that time. Well, I accepted, of course, but under one condition. I do not want to be only a correspondent. I had this idea. It's very good not only to collect news, to get the news, but also to give information to the Dutch public, and if possible, even outside Holland, to promote the idea of independence, etc. So to sell news, was a nice idea. Adamalik came here on his way to Prague, business, not only and at the same time to visit Moscow, sign a contract with an agreement with us, a very clumsy agreement. I had to renew that afterwards, but no money. Yeah, a travel check, only $100. That's all. Well, all right, let me try. I had the help from an old crack in journalism, Sluimers, a Dutchman. In fact, he was a greenhorn. What do I know about news gathering? Well, of course, during the revolution, was one of the editors of a youth magazine.
You were earlier.
Yeah, that was during the revolution. Of course, to stop. During because of the Japanese occupation, I had to stop my study. It was afterwards, after the Japanese occupation. There was a revolution.
Yes.
I partook.
Yes.
And
where were you living at that time?
Malang, in East Java. Yeah, Bung Tomo.
Right.
All these people.
Right.
Then worked for the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the Sejarah. Well, it was a matter of it was party politics. I was member of the board of the Socialist Party, not the PSI. Sejarah. Just when was it? Was the end 47? The two socialist parties, one led by Marxist writers, difficult to say whether it's Marxist-Leninist or two socialist parties. One was led by Amir Sharifuddin and Tanding Ji, the other Bashir. They fused, came together, and became Partai Sosialis Stop.
Yes.
Without Indonesia.
Without the Indonesian, yeah. Yes.
I became member of the board, lived in Malang, then, was asked by the party who had the political leadership in government, of course, the so-called left wing, Sayap Kiri, Andi Shahrir, and Amir, of course. Amir was Minister of Defense. I said, all right, foreign affairs need Chinese. So I was chosen as a young man. Then I was asked to work there. It was 47. I'm not talking about now. The story has nothing to do with Antara. All right.
No, never mind, because your Antara experience is post-revolutionary, so I didn't disclose that, actually. But you were saying things, actually, yesterday about Bung Tomo, which is of interest to me, about whether or not he was actually in Surabaya at certain times. And
of course, no.
He started off in Surabaya, but
that's true.
When everybody had to get out in November, they all fell back to their terugvaart basis.
And it was Malang.
And yes, and he went to Malang.
He went to Malang, and there was a branch in Mojokerto. Mojokerto.
He's still calling it Radio Pemberontakan.
Yes. Mojokerto was the headquarters of all the youth groups. There were several. Politically, most major, that was the Pesindo, the Socialist Youth Organization. The more or less Japanese influence and more or less, so to say, fascist group. That was Bung Tomo's.
Yes.
That was this.
And did they operate out of that building in Jalan Pemuda, which still exists?
Yeah, in Surabaya, it's called Jalan Pemuda. But how long? After the 10th of November, it's finished. After the Battle of Surabaya started.
But there's a building in Jalan Pemuda which is associated with.
That was there.
So that was there at that time. They operated out of that.
But after that, that was more important.
It wasn't called Jalan Pemuda then. Yeah, called something else.
And then he withdrew to Malang, from where he delivered his speeches.
Continued to broadcast.
Broadcasted. It's from irresponsible. Yeah. There was a question yesterday. How was it able to, with radio broadcast, he could arouse the sentiments and minds of young people, go to death, and indeed that was why the Pesindo, the left-wing youth movement, so to say, disagreed with him, was wrong. Well, my own experience, I joined a group of Chinese youth volunteers from Malang. We went to Surabaya. That was not because of Sir Thomas' appeal to the masses, no. Out of our own conscious, see,
you knew what was going on.
We knew what was going on, and it was wrong to sit on the fence, so to say. So we must show to the Indonesian population that we were not sitting on the fence at all. And that's why we formed a group of volunteers going to the front in Surabaya. Well, as for me, that Sir Thomas, Karis, met the Krontong tune, the Krontong music tune, and then Allahu Akbar. Don't be afraid, you are invulnerable. Because your bamboo spear has already been, what you say?
Like a Chris, it's got the wahyu. Now people carried little sort of tokens of some sort.
All these things
that they believed made them invulnerable.
Yeah, and also the spear, the invulnerable. But what did I see? What was the experience? Instead of going to the front of Surabaya, they withdrew all these youths, crying, Merdeka, Merdeka. As for me, my goodness, this is not the same as No Pasará of the Dolores Ibaruri, who was in La Pasionara and the Spanish Civil War. That was, see, No Pasará, they were
Yes, no, it will not part.
But this Merdeka, that was my impression, because he began Allahu Akbar Merdeka. That was Sutomo's speech. They went to death. The others who was there on the front, I saw them. See, it was misleading to say that I didn't like that kind of policy. That is demagoguery. That is irresponsible.
Demagoguery.
Yeah. Irresponsible. That's why I don't like it. And the lies he spikes on. I'm here and sitting fighting at the front.
Yes. So what was it that put the idea into your mind as a young man to go down from Malang into Surabaya?
That's what I said.
You knew what was going on. You knew that from what source?
From radio.
From radio.
Oh yeah, that was very tense.
So you were listening to what then? Listening to RRI?
RRI, yeah.
Rather than Radio Pemberontakan?
Both, RRI both. Radio Pemberontakan was only, they called them Radio Pemberontakan, but the news, for example, the ultimatum given by Kritis, for us in Malang, 100 kilometers south from Surabaya, it was very tense. Will they get away or will it be war? What was the source? Of course, the radio and not the newspaper.
You didn't get Suara Asia up there?
Yeah, we get it, but Suara Asia was in Jakarta. How long will it take to come in Malang?
Suara Asia or Suara Rakyat?
Suara Asia.
There was a newspaper.
In Surabaya there was one also, Suara Rakyat. Suara Rakyat. Well, and in Malang itself, we had Malang Post, etc.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the dates.
No,
I don't remember the dates. All right, we had our own mass media, that's true. But the most important news comes from radio.
Yeah.
And when we heard, that was the 9th of November, I think. Was it?
Oh, the ultimatum was issued twice. It was issued on radio, and then it was issued by a leaflet drop. On the 9th, there was a leaflet drop that said, by tomorrow morning, if you haven't handed in your arms and so on, then we shall...
And, it was not only Indonesian radio, what was important for us. Australia, even Radio San Francisco.
Yes.
So, news, which was collected by the foreign journalists. I do remember that David Jenkins, who later became the general manager for Southeast Asia, Reuters, that he was also there. And so foreign radio broadcast was also very important for us.
Yes. I'm interested in your impressions about that, because if you were a young man at the time and you were subjected to the same feelings and emotions and information and misinformation that everybody else received. And of course, it may well be that all this stuff about Bung Tomo and his influence over events may be a myth, a revolutionary myth. And it's impossible to say.
You mentioned the name of Ben Anderson's McGorman, ORG, the abbreviation for ORG, Irish name.
Benjamin O'Gorman, something.
Yeah, like that. Well, there you can find it, indeed. We must not underestimate his role. But more important for him was a coincidence after the big mass rally of the Masyumi at that time, the Muslim groups, so to say. After the mass rally, and on that mass rally, the Holy War was proclaimed, the Jihad, there.
In Surabaya.
After that, Bung Tomo, jumped in, so to say, with this agitation. Well, that was the background of that big death. Yeah, that event, the Battle of Surabaya, at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, when Sutomo used to speak, the Dutch tried to interfere, what do you call it in the technical term, for storm.
Yes, I see. The jam.
The jam. And giving command, so transmitting on the same wavelength. With that was my question yesterday. Is it true or not? I don't know.
No, I haven't heard that, and I don't know when they would have been in a position to start doing that.
Why not? Well, we are 47. Oh no, on 46. Yeah,
not by late 46. Or they would have been
late 42. The first Nika troops and the navists, the intelligence, the field intelligence was already there.
Oh yeah, it was July 46, the British pulled out, so the Dutch were there in force by then. But what you said that you you used the expression that the news you got from the radio was more important than what you got from the newspapers. What do you mean by that?
The circulation of a newspaper, first of all, the newspaper came too late, always. Was not as direct as,
Right.
That's right. That's one thing anymore.
In those days, you'd get your newspaper, I suppose, if it was a Jakarta published paper.
Yeah, that's why.
A week late
or something like that.
Yeah.
And in the time of revolution, hot factual news was more important than news articles, comments, etc.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
It's more or less what I was saying yesterday.
Yeah.
What was important was information, so that people could build their picture of the world and react in an appropriate manner.
Have you taped Sukarno's last speeches in 65?
I haven't, but I have a collection that somebody sent me of some of his speeches.
It's very beautiful. They're the men Sukarno spoke, no more the politician, but the man who said, combat what he said, Dutch thinking, wipe out from your mind, Dutch thinking and Indonesian thinking then. At that critical moment, we knew you yourself, we are still thinking Dutch. Still.
Yes, I've heard some of his last speeches.
And the other speeches, the Radio Ampera you mentioned, the Radio Ampera, they were more than Radio Ampera. And who gave them these radio sets? Was it you? According to us, that was UFIS and Marshall Green.
Well, they had a lot of help from the army as well.
And the army as well. And the army from the USIS.
And from the then Minister of Culture, Sani.
Yeah.
And I mean, they met in his house when Ampera was set up.
Yeah.
But not Ampera, but...
there was Ampera, there was also Pancasila, there was, I don't know. And also the Muslim youth had also their own... I was there here.
In 65?
We are still here.
Well, because you're Chinese. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was a dangerous time for anybody.
For anybody, especially for me. No, I was arrested, and my capacity as being the proxy of Sukarno.
Oh.
Since the end of 64, within that policy which was called the Guided Democracy, Antara was nationalized, so to say nationalized, and half of Antara became the president. That was Sukarno.
Yes, yes.
You see, but of the world,
Yeah, but was it a tool? Was Antara a tool of the nationalist movement in the sense that it actually distorted the truth?
Sometimes yes, sometimes also. What is not in the national interest, and that was it. Yeah. What we call and what's the national interest, I don't know. Did you see? And when I came there, that was the first discussion I had with the staff. My point was to be impartial is already progressive, because the development is going in the political developments in the world and also in Indonesia. A progressive development is it. Being impartial, you are already progressive. As a politician.
Maradi told me, he used a very telling argument once. He said that one of the reasons why radio was a very good diplomatic weapon during the revolution was because the revolutionary had right on its side, because it was in the moral right. It didn't have to fear telling the truth. Therefore, it was easy to delegate responsibility down the line to regional stations, because you just said to them, listen, tell the listeners what's happening, because we can't lose by telling the truth. But you're saying that Antara was distorting the truth.
Sometimes, yeah. It is interest. Withholding news is distorting on it.
Oh, yes. But, of course, the revolution was over by the time you joined Antara, so the situation had become slightly different.
Yes.
You've got a revolution.
Yeah.
Bad news is good news, because if you're losing, it heats everybody's blood. So they're more determined to fight, and it raises the emotional temperature. So, right, in a sense, unlike a formal war where the loss of a battle demoralizes people a bit.
Yes. So I came there in the period of reconstruction of the news agency. That was there. And then still sometimes it's difficult. Which political party, which group is in power, you see? Then they ask us, of course. No, an Asian news agency can never be like UPI, Reuters, more or less. IFP was like us during the goal. IFP was more a government news agency than a free and independent news agency. More or less, that situation was still. I thought I had to make it anyhow a reliable news agency, reliable for, of course, the outside world and also for newspapers. And that was what against